Well, were you able to hear it okay? That's good. If my mother were in here, she said, I couldn't hear anything. She hadn't heard a thing in years. All right. How many of you have a friend or, a fairly close acquaintance that is Jewish? You know someone kind of well that's Jewish. Okay, good. I was just counting on you guys to know someone that's Jewish. In all your practices, you've not found you. So I had a next-door neighbor when I lived in Alabama that was Jewish. And I tried on many occasions to kind of have some type of a conversation with him, and it never went anywhere. He was, so you remember the three that he defined kind of the world of Judaism into three different groups, which, it of course is many, many, many different groups, because under each one of these groups, you have many subgroups as well. But you have the Orthodox, and then you have the Conservative, and then you have the Reform. And he would have been, if anything, a Reform. In other words, he was a very, 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 word we would use around here is liberal. He didn't hold to any of the old ways of doing anything. To know him, to see him, you wouldn't understand he was Jewish whatsoever. He lived his life exactly the way that he wanted to, but on occasion his family did go to the Jewish synagogue in our little town. And incidentally, that synagogue was really, that there was, and this is kind of a stereotypical thing to say, so I don't really mean to say it condescendingly, but there was a very, very, very wealthy Jewish person in that town. And anyway, he was paying Jewish families $10,000 apiece to come and move to that town. If they would relocate to our town of Dothan, he would give them $10,000 because they were trying to build up the Jewish community in that town. Of course, when you think about Judaism, and the hard thing about studying these world religions is because we have such preconceived ideas by basically what we see on television that determines what we think we know about them. And that's really not very fair whatsoever, but it's hard to get around that. But, the thing that I enjoyed so much about what he was saying is, and the thing that I tried to do with my neighbor across the street, what can be best capsulized in this phrase, I tried to tell them the rest of the story. I tried to finish the story. I tried to keep him moving, because in his Jewish views and Jewish faith, he could only get so far, and then, he wouldn't go any further. And so what I wanted to tell him was that actually Jesus is the continuation of your faith. And that in a sense, I am the continuation of your faith. That my ancestry, my heritage is in Judaism. Abraham, the calling of Abraham. And I believe there's 39 books and that's where you got to be very careful, but in the Hebrew Bible, okay? Nobody wants an Old Testament, do they? I mean, old's no good, right? You want new. So if you ever have a conversation with a Jewish person, you don't ever use the phrase Old Testament. You've lost credibility right there. So, they prefer, and I try to use the phrase Hebrew Bible. But my Hebrew Bible has 39 books in it, And so Christianity to me is just the continuation of their story. And the challenge is to keep their story moving, because they stall out at a certain point and they don't see Jesus and the 27 books of the Christian Bible, as you might want to say it to them, as anything to do with what they are discussing or talking about. So anybody else have a story or a reflection on